morning and
Good
welcome to What's Up
morning.
Ocala. I'm your host, Andrew Praber, and today, this morning, I have a very special guest. Could you please tell everyone who you are and, more importantly, what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Lariana Horsley. Thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited to be talking about Casa Marion. We are the certified domestic violence agency that serves the county of Marion.
Awesome. That is very, very cool. So tell us a little bit about Casa Marion. What exactly, what exactly it is and how it got started and go from there.
Sure. So Casa Marion, the way Florida is organized for domestic violence, every county has a certified by the state domestic violence agency. And there was a long-standing agency in the area for many, many years. And that organization folded about 2 years ago. So there was a crisis in the county in that Marion County didn't have a certified center to be able to offer life-saving services for survivors of domestic violence, and their families. And so there was a real crisis to try and get a new agency stood up who could offer those services. What we do as a certified agency is actually written into statute within the state of Florida. And so there was no way for an agency who hadn't been providing such services to open in Marion County.
Really?
Exactly. And so it's a bit of a catch-22 in that you couldn't provide certified services unless you'd been operating for 2 years, and you couldn't get certified unless you had been offering the services. So there was no legal way for an existing organization in the Marion County area to come in and provide those certified services.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what did you
Yes.
guys do?
So essentially what happened is the folks in Marion County, including the sheriff and the chief of police, County Commissioner Michelle Stone, and about 20 other folks banded together and, we're in a crisis about what are we going to do for survivors in this county. And so they worked with the state of Florida to seek out an agency who would be willing to extend their certification and to be able to come into the community, extend that certification so that those certified services could be provided. Now, when I talk about certified services, there's some very specific things that we do, which we can get into later, but they're very specific. And it's, again, those are certified services, which is different than what any other agency can provide. So basically, our organization is Casa Pinellas. Excuse me.
Way to go, Pinellas County.
We did offer to extend our certification and be able to come into Marion County and provide those services. So we actually started serving the county on January 1st of 2024, and it was a crazy ride to begin with. And so we opened up services. We were in a temporary facility, started serving people right away. And then last year, we were able to secure a new facility and open up permanent services.
So does that mean with your second year coming up, then do you become your own entity, or are you going to continue with the certification you have?
So we're in discussions about what really looks greatest for Marion County and Pinellas County. It is difficult. We're not contiguous counties, and so the travel is a little bit difficult for us.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trek.
It is a bit of a trek, but I am so proud that we have stood up exceptional services in Marion County, and things are running along swimmingly. We're doing really great work in a great facility, and so the numbers, and I'll talk about those in a little bit too, are really off the charts. The issue with domestic violence, and you may or may not be very aware of what domestic violence looks like in the county, but it's a very underreported crime. It's very intimidating. There's a lot of victim blaming that occurs. People don't understand the dynamics of it. And so people are scared to report it, and they're scared to get help because they don't know what that help can look like. And so the numbers here that we've been seeing and helping in the county are really astronomical.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really scary. What what does your facility actually look like? I mean, of course, I've seen some news articles and stuff,
Uh-huh.
but what exactly have you guys built here?
So the facility is gorgeous. I will say that it's been renovated and it's lovely. It's obviously at an undisclosed location, but it's bright and light and airy, and we have capability from anywhere from 20 to 80 persons in the facility. In the state of Florida, we often talk about bed space. It's really a bit of a misnomer. Our ideal situation is that we're going to have one person or one family in each room that we have in our facility. And so we unless it's absolutely necessary, if there's high lethality situations or things like that, we will have people together in a room. But it is our intent and our desire to have people in a room with just themselves or their families, because we find that the healing and goal setting just is much more effective when somebody is able to be with themselves and not strangers in a room.
Right.
Yeah, but as I said, bed space is always an issue. There's always much more need than we have available space.
Even though there's 80, there's a
Up
potential
to
for
an
80.
80, up to
Wow.
80 based on family size. So again, we
Oh,
try and limit to one person or family in a room to
okay.
help their healing journey. But sometimes we have families come in. We had one mom who had 8 children.
Oh
And
my.
so, right, yes,
Yeah, that would be a lot
it's a lot. It's a
to
lot.
try and work around. Yeah,
Yes.
that's wow. Okay. So how how can we help? She laughs because that's probably such a huge ask. Like,
Oh,
obviously, money.
right,
There's always,
right.
whenever there is any kind of facility such as this that has a huge need, then that means there's stuff that we can do financially.
Absolutely.
So how exactly and how can we help?
So the interesting thing about domestic violence is the way we look at it is there's a lot of different things that we can do along the continuum. A lot of it's education about what is domestic violence. Again, it's such an underreported crime, and there's so much victim blaming with the issue that people don't really understand what it is. And so often we hear people say, well, I would never be in a situation like that. I would just leave. Well, domestic violence isn't just about violence, and it doesn't start with violence.
No.
It starts with lots of power and control issues. And it usually starts with one type of power and control. Let's say controlling the finances, or controlling whether the partner works, or controlling the lease, doing all of these different things, isolating the survivor from their friends and family so somebody isn't saying, gosh, something doesn't seem right.
Mhm.
There's lots of these tactics that happen before it turns violent. So, anyways, back to the question that you asked, there's lots of things that we can do, including education to the community, so that we don't continue to victim blame and make it difficult for survivors to seek the help that they need, but also to have survivors recognize when they're in a power and control situation, in a power and control relationship, and what those layers look like before it turns violent. Every time we do public education, we always have somebody who says, my gosh, I didn't realize that I was in a power and control type relationship, whether or not it has turned violent
It's
yet.
very interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting the word that you're using, survivor instead of victim,
Yes.
because so many times people don't even realize they're in an abusive relationship. I know I was listening to a podcast about finances.
Mm-hmm.
Love Dave Ramsey
Mm-hmm.
podcast. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But somebody called up and she was saying that she had a nursing degree but wasn't allowed
Mm-hmm.
to work. She had children, so she wasn't um, sure how she could support them because she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't allowed to have a job. And every time she would go to do her job or get a job,
Mm-hmm.
her car would break down. And her
Ah.
husband was a mechanic, and he was literally disabling her vehicle. So she was
Mm-hmm.
stuck in a situation. And yeah, the the person, Dave Ramsey was saying, you're in an abusive,
Mm-hmm.
very dangerous
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yay, Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, it was. He was very, very, very worried for her. And it was just
Mm-hmm.
strange that she didn't realize she was in
Mm-hmm.
an abusive relationship. And I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
he's disabling your car.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so obvious to us, but to her, she's like, I don't know what to do. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
capable and willing to work, but I'm literally being held captive in this life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
Mm-hmm.
been moved away from all my family and my friends. I don't know anybody here.
Right.
And I have these kids. What am I supposed to do? And
Mm-hmm.
I just cannot even imagine being put in that situation or finding myself in
Mm-hmm.
that situation. So my heart went out to her. I keep
Mm-hmm.
wondering
What
what
happened?
happened to her. But yeah, that was very eye opening because she'd mentioned over and over again
Mm-hmm.
that her husband was telling her she couldn't leave.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would believe anything because he had not raised his hand to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she was under the misconception that she wasn't in an abusive relationship
Mm-hmm.
because she had not been physically
Absolutely.
struck. And I'm like,
Absolutely.
that's not, it's a financial abuse more than an
Mm-hmm.
emotional and all of this. And I'm going, that's so odd. So do the people that come to you, do they have to be physically struck?
No, they do not. And thank you for asking that question because so many people don't realize that they're in a potentially dangerous situation. But the most dangerous time for a survivor to leave or is when they're trying to leave. So
Right.
the woman who called in, he may not have been physically violent with her before, but if she is attempting to leave and the financial abuse isn't working as a tactic to keep her, it's highly likely that it would turn violent at that point in time. So that's
Wow.
what we see is, again, oftentimes it hasn't turned, violent, but when a survivor does try and leave, that's when it does. And so that's why
Scary.
it's so important to utilize our services and create a safety plan so that we can make sure that the survivor is knowledgeable about what could happen and chooses tactics that are going to hopefully make that person and if appropriate, their children as safe as possible. But yes, so one of the issues with domestic violence is for it to be a crime, yes, there needs to be physical violence involved. But, again, not all domestic violence does include that violence because it can be all of those power and control tendencies that happen prior to
Right.
violence.
Just the breaking down of the person. And
Correct.
I mean, it almost sounded like kidnapping, really,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a willing kidnapping. It was very, very strange
Yeah. And they
situation to
say,
hear.
studies say, I'm sorry, I keep touching it. Studies say that about 99% of all domestic violence situations do include some sort of financial abuse.
Right.
And so, keeping funds from one of the partners, not allowing them to work or controlling that. What we see a lot of in this community too is controlling the lease, purposefully not paying on the lease so that you're ruining the survivor's credit so they're not able to
Oh,
leave and
wow.
go get
Right.
right, a place of their own. So lots of those different kinds of tactics.
Well, as speaking as a property manager, we
Mm-hmm.
have hundreds of properties in management, and we see situations like that. We normally have a conversation with the survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and we discuss their options. And because nobody wants an eviction, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody, the owner doesn't
Right.
want it, we don't want it. If there's a way to not have that on their record,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely what we're going to try for. So just having a quick conversation about that
Mm-hmm.
um, is extremely helpful. Being proactive about it and say, here's the situation. Here's what I know he's going to
Mm-hmm.
do. How do I
Mm-hmm.
circumvent this? How do I
Mm-hmm.
protect my name and my assets and my potential to rent something later? So that does happen. It happens a lot, in fact, and we
Absolutely.
see it quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And a lot of the time, the survivor doesn't even know that it's being done.
mm-mm.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very difficult situation, and there's so many intricate little
Mm-hmm.
parts and pieces that are moving, and each situation is so individualized. How in
Mm-hmm.
the world can you guys help so many in such
Yeah.
vastly different situations?
Yeah.
because sometimes it's just the single person, or sometimes it's with 8
Mm-hmm.
children. I can't even fathom going into
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Because then you have also the child support situation. You have
Mm-hmm.
um, their rights as a parent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you would want to make sure they don't come up on kidnapping charges for their children as well. I mean,
Right.
so many different
Right.
situations. How do you guys assist people with that?
Well, and thank you. That's a great question, because that's one of the issues with dealing with domestic violence is everybody's situation is completely different.
Yeah.
And so it's really important. I mean, it's really about having advocates that are able to work with the survivor in their unique situation.
Wow.
I mean, if let's say they have been in a situation where they weren't allowed to work, well, do they even have access to their social security card and birth certificate if they did try and go get a job? So trying to access, that information, or is transportation an issue, or housing, or,
Right.
you mentioned the children. I mean, is there divorce, custody? I mean, all of those different things. And so what we try and do is we do have our shelter. We talked about our shelter. One of the misnomers in Florida, though, is that everybody needs or should go to shelter if they're in a domestic violence situation. And I'm going to say right now, the shelter is fantastic, but communal living can be very tough. If you're used to living in your own home, going into a communal living environment can
Mm-hmm.
be very, very difficult. And so we have an outreach office, and we try and offer advocacy and assistance in many other ways other than just shelter, which is what a lot of people don't realize that we do. So we have a 24/7 hotline. People can call there if you're a survivor, or if you are a friend of or a family member or a coworker and you have concerns and you need advice. You are welcome to call that 24/7 hotline and get information at any point in time about what services we offer, what advocacy we can provide, and what you, if you're a bystander, can do to assist that survivor, and information that you can
That's
provide.
fantastic. Can you share the hotline number with us?
Sure, absolutely. It's 352, area code 352-722 CASA, which is 2272.
Oh, how fantastic is
Yeah.
that? Very easy to remember. So, and that's for not only the one in the situation, but also family members saying, "How
Absolutely.
do I help them?"
Absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
that's fantastic.
We also then offer our outreach services, which somebody can come into our facility and they can meet with an advocate and they can talk through the situation. They can start to understand what resources are available to them. So, for instance, right now we have some funding from the county that can assist with housing. We have an injunction for protection attorney. All they do is injunction for protection, which is a restraining order. So, help securing that to increase safety, or again, taking a look at their individual situation and how they can assist them. Sometimes, maybe it's just that they need some clothes for the kids as they're trying to make rent, or whatever it may be. We really try and help the survivor with where they're at and trying to get them on the path to safety.
That's fantastic. Well, you mentioned that the location is undisclosed,
Yes.
and it's beautiful. And I've seen pictures. I don't know exactly where it's at, but I have seen pictures of the whole construction and everything that or deconstruction really that you had going on. This was not something that happened overnight. It's been a very lengthy
Yes.
process to
Yes,
get
it
where you
has.
are now.
Yes.
So what do you need? What can we do as a community with this
Yeah.
very, very big issue and growing
Mm-hmm.
issue?
Absolutely.
What can we do?
Well, growing for several different reasons. Domestic violence obviously is always there, even if we're not talking about it. But here in Marion County, you're usually ranked third in the state of Florida for the highest amounts of domestic violence.
Wow.
And Sheriff Woods will tell you that it's absolutely a huge issue in this county. Um, and so helping with everything that we do, when survivors come into shelter, we take care of all of their basic needs. Their stay is a minimum of 45 days. So think about,
Wow.
yes, what you need in your household for 45 days. And that's what we provide for survivors. So we're talking all the food, the diapers, the formula, the clothes,
Wow.
everything that somebody would need, we do provide. So it's a very expensive expensive service to provide the community. So we always need assistance with those types of things. As far as when we're helping people in our outreach department, again, we're rehousing people. So oftentimes they're coming into a new home with absolutely nothing. So we'll try to
Oh,
help
wow.
them furnish it or provide clothes for the kids, or again, back to the housing, maybe they're trying to make rent. What can we do to subsidize with some food, so that they're able to save their money to pay for those other things? So we really try and work with survivors with wherever they're at, which means we need plenty of resources to be able to do that. The last thing that we want is for a survivor and their children to go back to an abusive situation because they don't have enough resources to make it on their own.
Wow. And these are determined women.
Yes.
I mean, they
And
are
men,
determined, and
and
men.
men.
Well, and that's a
Yes,
good question.
yes.
So are men in this facility as well, or is it women only, or
Yes,
what is
so
it?
we do serve males. It is predominantly a gendered crime. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. About 90% of the adults we serve are females, but we do serve males as well. And so there are situations where males are being abused by their wives. So we do see it
Wow.
more often than you might think.
Wow. I I know normally when you see it portrayed on
Mm-hmm.
TV and stuff like that, it's almost always the
Mm-hmm.
female victim.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear that there's actually men that are facing this as
Right.
well is devastating, really.
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine how a man would feel going through something like
Right.
that and trying to get help.
Well, think about it though. I mean, largely, when children are growing up in domestic violence homes, it's a learned behavior and they're learning about power and control. And so, oftentimes, if there's no intervention, children growing up in those types of families grow up to repeat the behaviors either as an abuser or as a victim, because again, it's a learned behavior. And so, if you have females that are growing up in that kind of environment, I mean, it's again about power and control, so they very easily can switch over to being the abuser if that's the behavior they learned in their household, which is
Wow.
why education is so important. We do a program called Peacemakers. I talked at the beginning of our conversation a little bit about education, and we do lots of adult education. We also are working with children, and it starts in kindergarten to talk not about dating relationships, but about what healthy boundaries in a relationship look like. So if something's happening in a kindergarten classroom that a child's uncomfortable, how do you have the conversation to say, this makes me uncomfortable, and how do I fix that? So we start having that education and those kinds of trainings very early on to equip children with, this is okay and this is not, and this is how I handle myself in that kind of a situation.
I can understand the need to break the cycle, but I've often joked in the past about how we teach 5-year-olds to keep your hands to yourself. It seems like a very basic concept,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're in kindergarten for a few hours each day and then you go home and on the weekends you see and experience
Mm-hmm.
this and go through all of that, it's not going to sink in.
It's not going to sink in. And we do know that a lot of studies talk about children growing up in domestic violence situations, that again, they do grow up to repeat the pattern, but there's also a lot of health detriment later on in their lives from growing up in that abusive situation.
How do you mean?
So there's something called the ACEs study. Are you familiar with that? So I don't even know how long ago, but the ACEs, 20 years, something like that.
Okay.
An insurance company was trying to predict who was going to be more expensive, right? Insurance companies would do that.
Of
That's not
course.
surprising,
Yeah,
right?
they have statistics on everything.
Right,
It's amazing.
exactly.
It's all
So the
about the money.
ACEs study, and you can look this up because it's really fascinating, but basically there's 10 things that if they happen to you when you are a child, you are more likely to have negative health consequences later on.
Really?
Absolutely. One of those is domestic violence in the home. Um, the other types of things that can happen to a child, I would argue that you simply cannot escape at least 3 or 4 of these 10 things. So a parent goes to jail, or there's a variety of
Right.
different things, but there are
Right.
10 standardized things. And once you reach 4 of these things in your life as a child, your risk of heart disease, cancer just grows exponentially,
Wow.
right, because of the stress that you're under as a child.
That is absolutely fascinating. I will
Mm-hmm.
definitely look that up.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
yeah,
Just to know how something like that can affect you health
absolutely,
wise for the rest of your life.
absolutely.
That's crazy.
Well, and to that same point, I mean, we talk and we know now there's so much about, pushing education and reading and things like that because
Right.
children's brains develop so early on. And so if domestic violence is happening in the home before the age of 3, your
Hmm.
child's brain is being developed in a particular way.
Right.
And the stress of that kind of activity, of even just being aware and hearing your parents yelling, or there might be physical fighting, or whatever it is, makes a child's brain develop very differently than children who are raised in homes without that kind of stress.
Wow. That's amazing. So you're not only helping the situation right now, you're also helping potentially break the cycle for the next generation,
Absolutely.
including health concerns that aren't even
Absolutely.
on the charts yet.
Absolutely.
That's phenomenal. That
Yeah.
is absolutely phenomenal. What
Thank you.
you must be so thrilled to work in in that job. I mean, what a great job to have where you're making such a huge difference. I'm sure it probably doesn't feel like that on a average Monday, but just just the thought of that kind of fulfillment
Mhm.
of being able to help so many is amazing. So,
Mhm.
what are what are the toughest aspects of your job?
Ah, goodness gracious. Well, I'm very open about being a survivor of domestic violence. And so I'm one of those people who had no idea that I was in a domestic violence
Really?
situation. No, I mean, I knew my husband was a bad guy. Don't get me wrong, but he would punch the walls next to my head. He never punched me during that time, and so
Oh, wow.
we got divorced because he wasn't a good guy. I knew that, but we had kids in common, and so we needed to stay connected. And at some point, he tried to kill me. Yeah, and
Wow.
so I woke up
That
on
escalated quickly.
well, it was over many, many years, but I
Wow.
didn't understand. I didn't come from a home where that kind of thing happened, and I didn't have friends that I knew of that were in that kind of a situation. I
Right.
just simply didn't know what it was.
So you were one of those going, oh, that would never
Right,
happen to me. I would just leave. And then
right.
you are actually in that situation.
Absolutely. And I
Wow.
did not connect the dots literally until I woke up in a hospital bed and my chart said domestic violence. I'm like, oh my gosh, is that what this is?
Oh my,
Because
wow.
I
Gotta bring it
knew,
home.
yeah, I knew there were bad
Wow.
things, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't hitting me. And so I just didn't know. So
Wow.
for me, back to your question, the greatest part is trying to help people. The worst part is knowing how many people are out there that don't know what it is, don't know how to access help, and reading about these stories in the newspapers. I mean, it's rare that someplace in the country, I get all these notifications on my phone and murder, suicide, murder, suicide. Okay, it's not murder suicide.
It's just murder.
It's murder and it's domestic violence. And so
Wow.
we don't even use those words when we look at it in the media, and so people just really don't connect how prevalent it is. And I will just go back to my personal story and where things clicked for me. I woke up in the hospital bed, it said domestic violence.
Yeah,
I was
that'd be a
there for
very, very big, wide open wake up call.
right,
Wow.
but I was in the hospital for a little over a month.
Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty traumatic. During that time, there were 12 people who came to me, nurses, a doctor, there was a technician, everybody who had their own story that they wanted to share. Some closed the doors and cried with me.
Oh, wow.
Just crazy stories because I was a safe place for people to have a cathartic conversation about their own experiences, including the pastor who came to see me every single day, the chaplain of the hospital. She came to see me every single day. And the day I was being released, she closed the door. She said, what do I do? My husband is abusive and I don't know what to do.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
And she obviously was one of those that it wasn't reported. That's
correct.
That's devastating.
Right.
So,
So that's the hardest part, is knowing how many people need help and they don't know where to go or how to access it.
wow. So to have an entire county, one of the largest counties in Florida, one of the it's actually our county is larger than
Mm-hmm.
the state of Rhode Island. It's getting pretty close to the size of the state of
Yeah.
Connecticut,
And
and
you
we've
have people
had
moving in every single
oh, we
day
have
like
grown
crazy.
exponentially
Yes.
since
Yes.
2020, and to have absolutely no assistance in the past
Mm-hmm.
for domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
That's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even imagine the influx of people that you had saying this has been happening for years, but nothing existed for us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you able to, have you been able to keep up? I can't even imagine. So,
Yeah.
I mean, where did those people go?
Well, there was an agency that was operating in the past.
I heard about it and the situations. It almost sounded like in not to disparage the intention,
Mm-hmm.
but it almost sounded like it wasn't much of a better situation from what they might have been coming from, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the agency. I do know that it did fail, but Casa Pinellas, where Casa Marian originated from, we were excited to come and offer our certification to Marion County because we're really trying to create systemic change for the issue. And
That's
so it was an
awesome.
opportunity for us to extend high quality services within the population who really did need assistance. And last year, I'm going to look at my paper to tell you exactly how many people we served. 1,281 people
Oh, wow.
through the organization. So, and again, that's just the tip of the iceberg
That's multiple
because,
people a day.
right,
That's wow.
absolutely. It's a lot of people. And
Wow.
again, it's such an underreported crime. And if people weren't getting a level of care that they felt comfortable asking for help in the past, just think about how many more cases are out there that people haven't reached out yet, either because they're just simply not aware, like me, or because they didn't feel that there was going to be the level of care that they wanted. So there's a lot
Wow.
of folks out there who still need assistance, and we're here to help.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. I feel so much more educated since you've come in here about the issues and also, what's available. That's phenomenal. So, if you could give that phone number one more time of where people can get more
Mm-hmm.
information, no matter who they are.
Absolutely.
What's the phone number?
It's 352-722 CASA, which is 2272. You can
Perfect.
also visit our website. It's casamarian.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate you coming in
Absolutely.
and chatting with everyone. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing
Well,
for our
thank
county as
you.
well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.